before the world turned him into the wild, unstoppable frontman of Guns N' Roses. Axl Rose was just a kid trying to outrun a past that never stopped clawing at him. His voice shook stadiums, his anger electrified a generation, and his presence felt too big for any stage to hold. And while the crowd saw a legend in the making, Axl was fighting battles behind the scenes that fame couldn't fix. Battles that followed him long after the music quieted. For a while, it looked like he had everything: the fire, the fame, the legacy. But time didn't just change Axl, it made him into someone almost unrecognizable compared to the man the world once worshipped. And it leaves us with one painful question. How does someone who rose that high end up living a life that feels this far from the legend he used to be? This is the heartbreaking reality of how Axl Rose lives today. The haunted beginning of Axl Rose. Axl Rose didn't start life with any sort of safety net. He came into the world as William Bruce Rose Jr. in Lafayette, Indiana, born to a teenage mother and a 20-year-old father. People in town whispered about as a charismatic local delinquent. Nothing was planned. Nothing was steady. And before he was old enough to understand the world around him, it was already turning violent and unpredictable. By the time he was 2, his parents' relationship had fallen apart. His father didn't just fade out of the picture. He took Axl and harmed him in ways no child should ever endure, then disappeared from Lafayette entirely. His mother tried to rebuild, marrying Stephen L. Bailey and giving her son a new last name, hoping a new identity might bring a new beginning. Instead, Axl found himself in a home where fear lingered in the corners. He later accused his stepfather of abusing the entire family and harming his sister in ways that left deep, permanent wounds. He wasn't alone in the house. He grew up with his sister Amy and a half-brother, Stuart. Stuart eventually chased his own path into the music world, playing in Los Angeles bands and later working behind the scenes in Hollywood. But back then, they were just kids trying to survive a household ruled by strict religion and unpredictable consequences. The Bailey home revolved around Pentecostal rules. Church wasn't a Sunday event, it was several times a week. Axl taught Sunday school, sat through long services, and lived under a roof where everyday items could be tossed out without warning. One week there would be a TV, and the next week it was gone because it was suddenly considered dangerous. The message was always the same. Everything was wrong. Everything was forbidden. Everything carried some hidden threat. But even in that heavy atmosphere, Axl found one thing that made him feel alive: music. It wasn't just an interest, it was a way out. He started singing in the church choir at 5. He performed with his siblings as the Bailey Trio, and at Jefferson High School, he joined the chorus and studied piano. He didn't just follow instructions either. He played with his range, practiced different tones, and even slipped into voices just to confuse his teacher. Something inside him was already pushing back, already reaching for something bigger. He eventually connected with other music-driven kids around town. Jeff Isbell, the quiet friend who would later become Izzy Stradlin, and musicians like Shannon Hoon and Paul Tobias. These were the same people who would help carve the earliest lines of his future, long before anyone thought they would end up connected to a global rock phenomenon. Then came the moment that changed everything. At 17, while digging through insurance papers, he discovered the truth. Bailey wasn't his real last name. His biological father was William Rose Sr., the same man who had vanished years earlier. And the revelation hit him hard. He dropped William, started calling himself W. Rose, and felt something shift inside him. Everything he believed about his own life suddenly didn't match the reality on paper. To make things worse, he never got the chance to confront the man who started it all. His birth father was murdered in 1984 by a criminal acquaintance. Axl didn't even learn about it until years later. The turmoil in his home and the confusion surrounding his identity pushed him into trouble. Lafayette became a place where he kept hitting walls. He got arrested more than 20 times, spent short periods in jail, and found himself circling the same problems again and again. When the threat of habitual offender charges came down, he knew staying in that town would destroy him. So he left. He headed west, and the road eventually led him to Los Angeles, a place loud enough to drown out the past and wild enough to absorb the intensity he couldn't shut off. The city didn't greet him with comfort, but it did give him something he'd never had before: space to reinvent himself. Once he was there, he threw himself into a band called AXL, and the people around him kept repeating the same thing. The name didn't just sound cool, it captured something that felt truer than anything he'd ever been called. It carried grit, danger, and unpredictability. It felt like the first identity he didn't have to inherit or apologize for. He officially adopted the name Axl Rose just before signing with Geffen Records in March 1986. This wasn't the rise of a rock star yet. This was a boy who had been running for years, finally stepping into the only version of himself that ever felt true. A name that didn't come from trauma, confusion, or secrets. A name he chose. A name he earned. And once he claimed it, the next part of his life didn't creep in. It hit him like a wave waiting for him the moment he landed in Los Angeles. Axl Rose and the birth of a dangerous new sound. By the time Axl Rose hit Los Angeles, he wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing survival. And LA, with all its noise, neon, and late-night chaos, became the place where he finally found the people and the energy that matched everything burning inside him. He didn't waste a minute. One night outside the Troubadour in 1983, he crossed paths with guitarist Kevin Lawrence, and before long, he was fronting Lawrence's band, Rapid Fire. They managed to record a 5-song demo that sat locked away for decades before finally being released in 2014. But even that early on, it was clear Axl wasn't someone who stayed still for long. After Rapid Fire, he moved on, linking back up with his childhood friend Izzy Stradlin to start Hollywood Rose. This wasn't some polished band with managers and budgets. It was raw hunger, late nights, and a handful of kids who believed they had something worth fighting for. A 16-year-old Chris Webber jumped in on guitar, and in January 1984, the group recorded a demo that included tracks fans now treat like sacred ground: Anything Goes, Shadow of Your Love, and Reckless Life. Years later, Slash and Steven Adler drifted through the Hollywood Rose lineup too, long before anyone imagined what those names would one day mean. But LA didn't roll out a red carpet for them. Axl bounced through short-lived gigs and even ended up joining LA Guns for a while. To keep himself afloat, he worked random jobs, including a night manager position at Tower Records/Video on Sunset Money, was tight. The grind was real, and at one point he and Izzy even joined a UCLA cigarette study just to make $8 an hour. Still, something bigger was coming. In March 1985, everything clicked. Axl and Tracy Guns decided to merge their bands, Hollywood Rose and LA Guns, bringing together Axl, Izzy, Slash, Duff McKagan, and Steven Adler. The mix was messy, loud, unpredictable, and exactly what the Los Angeles rock scene didn't know it needed yet. The name they chose was the one that would rewrite rock history: Guns N' Roses. They played their first shows at the Troubadour, dragging half of the Hollywood underground along with them. It didn't take long before record labels were swarming. Axl wasn't just another singer on the strip. He was a storm. By March 1986, they had signed with Geffen Records. That December, they dropped the EP Live, Like a Suicide, a teaser of the chaos that was about to hit. Then came Appetite for Destruction. Released in July 1987, the album didn't explode right away. It simmered. It clawed its way upward through relentless touring, word of mouth, and a music video for Welcome to the Jungle that fans pushed into heavy rotation. But once Sweet Child O' Mine hit the mainstream, the entire world felt the shift. The album climbed all the way to #1 and never looked back. More than 30 million copies sold worldwide. The best-selling debut album in United States history. And at the center of it was Axl. Unpredictable, intense, and impossible to ignore. But fame didn't tame him. It only gave him a bigger stage for the fire he carried. At the Monsters of Rock festival in 1988, 2 fans died when the crowd surged during "It's So Easy." Axl stopped the show repeatedly, yelling at security to control the chaos. From then on, he handled crowd trouble himself, calling out fans, stopping shows mid-song, and confronting anyone who crossed a line. It became part of his reputation Axl wasn't going to let anyone ruin the moment, no matter how loud or messy the pushback got. That same year, the band released GN'R Lies, another massive success and another storm. The track "One in a Million" sparked accusations of racism, homophobia, and xenophobia. Axl fired back with his own explanations, pointing to personal experiences, old wounds, and the complicated anger he carried from his past. But controversy followed him everywhere, and the band was dropped from an AIDS benefit lineup as the backlash grew. Even in the chaos, he became the face of rock's new era. Rolling Stone put him solo on the cover in 1989, fully on his terms, with the interview and photos completed by people he trusted. MTV called him one of the most powerful voices of the moment. Then came the next chapter, Use Your Illusion. The band went back to the studio in 1990, but sessions dragged as Steven Adler struggled with addiction. Eventually, they replaced him with Matt Sorum, and Dizzy Reed joined on keyboards. The new lineup stepped onto the Rock in Rio 2 stage in 1991, ready to take on the world. But behind the scenes, tension kept building. Rose pushed to fire longtime manager Alan Niven, refusing to finish the album until it happened. The band were unraveling even as their fame kept rising. And when the Use Your Illusion tour kicked off, a 2.5-year marathon, the madness went global. Late starts, explosions of anger, legendary rants, and crowds that sometimes turned violent. July 1991 sealed Axl's reputation for unpredictability. In St. Louis, after repeatedly asking security to confiscate a fan's camera, he leapt into the crowd to take it himself. When he got back on stage, he simply announced he was leaving and walked off. What followed was a riot that caused hundreds of thousands in damages and ended with Axl facing legal trouble. In September, the Use Your Illusion albums dropped, one debuting at #2, the other at #1. A record-breaking moment. But inside the band, it was falling apart. Izzy Stradlin walked out in November. He blamed the non-stop drama, the riots, the lateness, the addictions, everything he no longer wanted around him now that he was sober. The chaos didn't stop. Montreal, 1992 became another disaster when Metallica ended their set early due to an accident. Guns N' Roses came on late. Axl walked off with throat pain, and another riot erupted months later. He was convicted for the St. Louis incident and given probation. By 1993, they reached the end of the Use Your Illusion tour in Buenos Aires. Axl walked off that stage and didn't perform live with the band again for more than 7 years. But even as the tour came to a close, the real fracture inside Guns N' Roses had already begun. Not on stage, but between the two men who built the band's fire in the first place. When brotherhood turned into a war, the rise and collapse of Axl and Slash. If there was ever a partnership built to set the world on fire, it was Axl Rose and Slash. Together, they made Guns N' Roses feel untouchable. But behind the guitars, the screams, and the deafening crowds, their chemistry was already slipping into something darker. The tension didn't come out of nowhere. It simmered for years. It began quietly after Appetite for Destruction took over the world in 1987. Suddenly, 5 kids from the Los Angeles club scene were world-famous, rich, and drowning in every excess the era offered. The freedom, The money, the parties. It swallowed the band whole. While fans saw rock gods, inside the group things were already turning volatile. They pushed forward anyway. In 1988, they released a second EP, and then GN'R Lies, a short album that somehow became another massive hit, carried by the acoustic ballad Patience. For a moment, it looked like nothing could touch them. Both albums sat in the top 5. But success didn't fix anything. It only exposed what was already going wrong. That is when One in a Million dropped a grenade into the band. The lyrics, openly racist, anti-immigrant, and homophobic, caused a public eruption. Fans, journalists, and radio stations slammed Axl, and even inside the band, the fallout was ugly. Slash, whose mother was black, felt deeply uneasy. Axl stood by the lyrics, giving explanations that only made things worse. He claimed the racial slur was used because he was angry after almost being robbed. He described himself as pro-heterosexual. He even pointed to other musicians who had used the word. But none of it softened the blow, especially for Slash, who now had to stand beside a man using slurs that cut close to home. Their bond, once tight, began to fray. It didn't help that more chaos kept piling on. Drug use, a growing list of controversies, Axl attacking a security guard in Atlanta, and 2 fans dying during their Monsters of Rock, set in 1988. By early 1989, the band needed a break. They stopped touring and stopped recording, and during that downtime, their personal lives unraveled even more. Then came what should have been a dream. Opening for the Rolling Stones in October 1989. But the dream turned sour fast. On the first night mid-show, Axl made an announcement that hit Slash like a punch. Guns N' Roses would end unless someone stopped dancing with Mr. Brownstone. Everyone knew who he meant. Slash later said this moment was unforgivable. The humiliation stayed with him for decades. Axl claimed he was trying to save his friend's life. Slash heard it as betrayal. And this wasn't their only divide. The biggest break in their relationship came during the Use Your Illusion era. After the albums were released in 1991, Axl pushed for total creative control. He wanted huge orchestral moments, piano ballads, long, dramatic arrangements, and a complete shift from the band's raw beginnings. Slash, Izzy, and Duff felt like they were being locked out of their own band sessions dragged on. Axl often arrived late. Decisions happened without the others. The freedom that once defined Guns N' Roses turned into tension. None of them could ignore Izzy. Fed up, walked away in late 1991. His departure was a warning. The band they built was slipping away, and Axl was now steering it entirely on his own terms. Through all of this, the partnership between Axl and Slash kept deteriorating. Fights, resentment, creative battles. It all burnt in the background until 1995, when Axl took a step that changed everything. He left the original partnership and created a new one under the band's name. In 1997, he acquired full rights to the Guns N' Roses name. Slash claimed they were forced to sign those rights away under pressure. Axl denied it years later. The truth was buried under 2 different stories, but the impact was clear. Slash left the band in 1996. Matt Sorum was fired soon after Duff walked away in 1997. One by one, the original lineup collapsed, until only Axl and Dizzy Reed remained. And then Axl disappeared. While fans waited for new music, he retreated into his Malibu mansion, rarely seen, rarely heard, and constantly rumored about. Reports described him as a recluse, someone who spent his nights writing, rewriting, and rehearsing, with revolving lineups as he tried to build what would become Chinese democracy. The world called him rock's greatest recluse, the Howard Hughes of rock, and the man who vanished while the legacy he created scattered across cities and continents. The partnership that once shook the world had crashed into years of silence. It took 2 decades for Axl and Slash to cross the same stage again. But by then, the damage had already become legend. And if his friendships burnt that fiercely, his relationships burnt even hotter. Because the same fire that destroyed his band also tore through his personal life. The women who loved Axl Rose and the storms that followed. Axl Rose didn't just live his life loudly on stage. His private life carried the same fire, the same intensity, and the same collisions that made his music unforgettable. Every romance he touched seemed to come with equal parts devotion and destruction, leaving behind stories as dramatic as anything he ever sang on Use Your Illusion. And at the center of it all was a man who could love fiercely one moment and burn everything down the next. His love life wasn't a collection of casual flings. It was a series of emotional detonations, the kind that inspired chart-topping ballads, late-night headlines, lawsuits, and heartbreak that never quite left him. Before the world knew Axl Rose as a rock god, he was just a struggling musician, drifting through Los Angeles in 1986 when he met Erin Everly, daughter of Don Everly from the Everly Brothers. They connected instantly, 2 young people with big dreams and even bigger emotional scars. Erin once admitted she wanted a husband, kids, a quiet life, and a station wagon, and believed she saw that future with Axl. Their love was intense enough to inspire Sweet Child O' Mine, the most unlikely love ballad to ever come out of the Appetite for Destruction era. Her smile, her eyes, her calm. All of it ended up in one of the most iconic rock songs ever written. She even appeared in the music video, becoming part of the band's early mythology. But behind the music, their relationship was a storm. Slash once described a blow-up at the Cat House during the It's So Easy video shoot, when David Bowie, who happened to be dating Slash's mother at the time, made the mistake of paying attention to Erin. Axl lost it on stage and threatened Bowie in front of everyone. That moment set the tone. Love, jealousy, and chaos are all happening in full view. They married in Las Vegas on April 28, 1990, but instead of finding stability, everything unraveled. Axl filed for divorce less than a month later. They tried to reconcile, Erin became pregnant, and they even picked out names, Shiloh Blue or Willow Amelia, but she miscarried in October 1990. The loss broke both of them, piling more emotion onto an already fragile bond. By November, another argument pushed Erin to walk away for good. Their marriage was annulled in January 1991. In 1994, she filed a civil suit accusing Axl of emotional and physical abuse. She once admitted she stayed as long as she did because she felt sorry for him, hoping things might eventually calm. Axl settled the case quietly, and the two cut all ties. Years later, Erin cleaned out everything that connected her to him. She auctioned off handwritten lyrics, personal letters, grunge-era flannels, photographs, and even their marriage certificate and wedding video. The items were sold one by one as if she were finally letting go of a chapter she carried for far too long. Some letters showed Axl trying to apologize, trying to promise he wasn't cheating, and even writing a simple note saying he was sorry her birthday sucked. But if Erin was the first great heartbreak, Stephanie Seymour was the second. She was already a star, a Sports Illustrated model, a Vogue cover sensation, a former Victoria's Secret angel, the kind of woman who could stop a room just by walking into it. She and Axl met in 1991 while filming the videos for Don't Cry and November Rain, and the chemistry between them wasn't subtle. The band felt it, fans felt it, the world felt it. Their relationship didn't creep in slowly. It hit with heat and speed. Seymour came into the romance with a young son, Dylan, and Axl tried to step into a father figure role, something he had always wanted but never really had himself. For a moment, their lives looked like they were folding together in a steady, real way. They got engaged in February 1993, and on the surface, it seemed like the start of something solid. But 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. Rumors began circulating that Seymour was cheating with Charlie Sheen. And whether true or not, the whispers fed into a tension that was already growing between them. The late-night arguments, the jealousy, the accusations. They weren't new. They were symptoms of a relationship that had been cracking long before anyone outside their circle knew what was happening. Behind closed doors, things were already unraveling in ways neither of them could control. Years later, Seymour would call the relationship a mistake, something that exposed her to a darker side of the rock world she never wanted to see again. She said the volatility, the intensity, the fear, it stayed with her long after she walked away. Axl pushed back in his own way, filing a lawsuit accusing her of assault and of stealing jewelry worth more than $100,000. The accusations hit the public like fire. She responded with countersuits, and for a while, the breakup became less about heartbreak and more about legal blows landing on both sides. Eventually, the cases were settled quietly, but the bitterness never really disappeared. It was a romance that started with cinematic kisses in music videos and ended with court dates, lawyers, and headlines. Two beautiful people caught in a kind of emotional chaos neither one of them could navigate, no matter how hard they tried. And as those relationships collapsed behind him, something far heavier was rising inside him. Something no lawsuit, no breakup, no stage could drown out. Because the truth was that the greatest battles Axl ever fought weren't with Slash, the press, or the women he loved. They were with him, the mind that wouldn't let him rest, and the heartbreaking life Axl Rose lives now. For all the noise, the riots, the sold-out arenas, and the anthems that defined an entire generation, the battle Axl Rose fought the hardest was the one happening quietly inside his own head, long before the headlines turned him into rock's wildest frontman. Axl was already wrestling with something far heavier than fame or chaos. And when the world thought he was just being difficult, dramatic, or destructive, he was actually unraveling under a storm he didn't have the words for yet. By 1989, after years of spiraling highs, crushing lows, and emotional swings that pulled him in every direction at once, Axl finally sat down with doctors who told him what he'd been running from: bipolar disorder. The diagnosis explained the rage, the depression, the sudden crashes, and the intensity that shook the people closest to him. But knowing the truth didn't mean he accepted it. He tried lithium for a short while, only to turn away from it almost immediately. He didn't like what it did to him, and didn't like how it softened the fire he believed made his music possible. He pushed back against the label completely, and insisted he simply felt things more than other people. And from that moment on, he chose to manage everything on his own, alone, raw, and without a safety net. But walking through life untreated left a trail of chaos behind him. Before fame, he had already racked up more than 20 arrests in Indiana. After fame hit, the trouble got bigger, louder, and far more public. In 1987, he was arrested on stage for going after a security guard. A few years later, he threw himself into a crowd in St. Louis to attack a fan with a camera, and what followed was one of the most violent riots in rock history. Dozens injured, thousands of dollars in damage. Axl was swept away in the middle of it, like a fuse that had burnt too fast. Airport altercations, police run-ins, assault accusations. It was all part of the life he never really had control over. And decades later, the past still found him. In 2023, former model Sheila Kennedy filed a lawsuit accusing him of sexual assault from 1989, a case he settled. While denying the allegation, controversy never left him. It clung to him like a shadow. As the world grew louder, Axl grew quieter. By the mid-1990s, Guns N' Roses was collapsing from the inside. Slash walked away. Duff followed. Matt Sorum clashed with him and was fired. One by one, the original band fell apart until only Axl and Dizzy Reed were left standing. And when the pressure peaked, Axl did what almost no one expected from the loudest voice in rock. He disappeared. For nearly a decade, he became one of music's most famous ghosts. No interviews, no appearances, no explanations. He shut himself away inside a massive Malibu mansion, living like a recluse, while the world argued about what had happened to him. Rumors swirled, unfinished albums, broken friendships, mental breakdowns, and perfectionism so intense it swallowed years. While his former bandmates moved on, Axl stayed locked inside the one place where he felt like he could breathe, the studio. Then, out of nowhere, he returned. In 2001, he walked onto the stage at Rock in Rio 3 with a completely new band, shocking everyone who doubted he would ever show his face again. 7 years later came Chinese Democracy, the album the world joked would never arrive. It didn't conquer the charts the way his early work did, but critics praised the ambition, the madness, the scale of it, and the kind of project only Axl Rose would attempt. And just when everyone thought the story had settled, something unbelievable happened. In 2016, he reunited with Slash and Duff, launching the Not in This Lifetime tour, a name that mocked the years fans spent believing the reunion was impossible. The tour shattered records and became one of the highest-grossing of all time. Then he stepped in as the temporary frontman for AC/DC, and despite the doubts, he delivered performances critics had to admit were jaw-dropping. But the loudness of the comeback only makes the quiet of his current life feel heavier. Today, Axl Rose lives tucked deep inside a secluded 4-acre retreat in Malibu's Latigo Canyon, a private world hidden behind nature, waterfalls, and silence. Inside his 4,333-square-foot home, time barely exists. He once said he doesn't go by a clock, and in that peaceful, insulated space, he doesn't have to. The house feels less like a mansion, and more like a bunker built for a man who has been running his entire life. He rarely appears publicly. He rarely speaks. When he does show up on stage, it feels like a rare glimpse of someone who survived more than he ever talks about: the riots, the lawsuits, the breakdowns, the addictions swirling around him, the betrayals, the mental battles no one truly understood, and the years lost in the shadows of his own mind. What makes his story heartbreaking isn't that he lives quietly now. It is everything he had to go through to finally find some quiet. Axl Rose didn't just outlive rock's wildest era, he outlived the chaos inside himself. Which Guns N' Roses song is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.